We have got the next 10th edition faction focus today, and this time it is the turn of the Spiky Marines, who are the Heretic Astartes, and they have got some very exciting new mechanics and rules going into 10th edition. Like we have seen with the other faction previews, they start off by showing us the Chaos Marines army ability. We don't get to see their unique detachment rule yet, but if you take a Heretic Astartes army, you get the Dark Pacts ability, and this is a very fluffy, potentially extremely powerful rule that lets you choose whenever a unit shoots or fights to give it a buff. You can either choose to give the unit lethal hits, which is the auto wound on hit rolls of 6, or you can give them sustained hits 1, which grants an extra hit on hit rolls of 6. So you can either go auto wounding on 6s against really tough targets, or exploding 6s to get more hits in if you are instead facing off against a green tide of orcs. Both are really cool staple abilities and also really quite strong, considering that you can potentially give this to a unit twice in a turn, because you can do it in the shooting and in the fight phase. So you can give a unit one of these buffs in the shooting phase and again when they fight, so you really can get a lot of bonus hits or just auto wounding hits over the course of a turn. Of course, this being so good and with the army being chaos, nothing comes without a price, and you do have to make a leadership test after a unit has made an attack if you choose to use one of the Dark Pact abilities, and if you fail, you take D3 mortal wounds. So there is a potential downside for all the buffing you can do, and if you do this on every unit across your entire army, you probably are going to fail maybe 1 or 2 every so often, so do expect to take some mortal wounds over the course of a game, but you do still have pretty solid leadership as Chaos, so I think it's fairly reliable, and you are getting this huge buff potentially across your entire army for potentially 2 phases every turn, so I would say arguably it's worth doing it on as many units as you can reliably afford to do it. Like if you're on the last model in a unit, maybe not, but if you've got a full squad, I would say almost more often than not it's worth doing on it. And I'll be honest, if you do this across your entire army, I would say this is arguably even better than the Marines' Oath of Moment ability. Yes, you can take damage, and it's a little bit more situational because there are some times when your unit won't be in combat after shooting, so you'll only be able to do it once. But if you get the maximum benefit out of this, at least on some units, I would say it's probably, just a little bit better than the Oath of Moment. We also, as usual, get a couple of unit spotlights. The first is the ever popular Chaos Legionnaires. They've stayed largely as you would expect. They are T4, 2 wounds and a 3-up save, but we also get to see the reverse side of the datasheet, which is really interesting because we can now see all of their juicy options, and to the relief of everyone, they still have a huge amount. You can take a massive variety of ranged and melee weapons. Some have been condensed down into one profile, but I think in general that's actually a good thing. So all your power weapons like axes and mauls and swords are now just accursed weapons, and they are strength 5, -2 AP and 1 damage. And then likewise, things like power fists and the heavy chain axe option are both now the same strength 8, -2 AP and 2 damage. And I know some people might complain about that, but I think in general it's a really good change. It means that you can model your units based on just what you like and what looks cool, and you don't need to worry about putting something onto a model that is a subpar option. It doesn't matter if one is previously better than the other, or one would get buffed or nerfed or whatever it may be. It doesn't matter if you've got a power sword or a power axe, it's still the same profile. So you can just make your models look as cool as you want them to be and still know that you're getting the same sort of value out of them compared to any other option that you could take in terms of looks of the weapon. We also see the new and much improved autocannon, which is a heavy weapon, so you get +1 to hit if you stand still. It fires 3 shots now at strength 9, -1 AP, and a superb 3 damage. So you can be hitting on 2s if you stay still, and really doing a good chunk of damage to infantry and light vehicles with this gun, which has always sort of been what it's good at previously, but now it just seems to be even better at it. They also have an ability called the Veterans of the Long War, which, like the Gene Stealers we saw yesterday, that gives them reroll wound rolls of 1 in melee, but reroll all wound rolls if they're fighting an enemy which is in range of an objective. So these guys are really going to be very choppy in combat. I think in general, they're probably going to be better in melee than they are at shooting. And just to put that in perspective, even if you just give the whole squad chainswords, just the basic chainsword option, that is still 40 attacks from a squad of 10 at strength 4, -1 AP, rerolling wounds, or at least rerolling wound rolls of 1, and also potentially having exploding 6s with their Dark Pact, which is almost Gene Stealer levels of melee power. They are going to be really, really good in close combat. And then on top of that, they can also take a Chaos Icon, which allows them to reroll their leadership test for their Dark Pact ability. And to me, this just seems like a must take. It means that you can absolutely, really reliably use that Dark Pact ability every single turn and potentially use it on shooting and melee every single turn and still be extremely unlikely to fail a roll, because you've got a 6-up leadership anyway, which is pretty good, but having that reroll on the Dark Pact ability means you are going to have a hugely successful chance of passing those tests, so you will very rarely take the D3 mortal wounds, so you may as well just use the Dark Pact as often as you possibly can. Even potentially if you're just firing, like bolt pistols, it may well be worth it. So I think overall, the Legionnaires look really good. They look super customizable still, which is really good. I know a lot of people were kind of scared that 10th might sort of narrow things down and make things a lot less sort of customizable in the game. It doesn't look like this is the case. They've still got a load of options. They look really fun, and they do look like they've got some genuinely solid damaging abilities. So they may actually be good on the tabletop. They may be worth taking instead of cultists now, which is just brilliant news for Heretic Astartes players. Following on from the likes of Guilliman and the Swarmlord, we did of course get to see Abaddon as well. He has, on the face of it, got a little bit of a nerf. He's dropped an inch of movement and a point of toughness, dropping to 5 in each, and it seems like a lot of his arguably very bloated but undeniably very powerful datasheet has been removed. He no longer ignores the first amount of damage that he takes. He no longer has a wound cap. Those two things alone are particularly big bits of news. On the weapons front, his Talon of Horus has gone from Assault 4, Strength 5, -1 AP and 2 damage to 4 shots with sustained hits 1 at the same profile. So we can now potentially get 8 hits instead of 4, so that is just a flat out buff. But in melee, things are a little bit less clear cut. Drachnien has gone from Strength 9, -4 AP and 3 damage, and doing D3 mortal wounds on 6s to 8 attacks at Strength 14 and -4 AP and 3 damage. It does have devastating wounds, so you are still doing mortal wounds on wound rolls of 6, but it's only 1 instead of the D3 that it does now. So it's arguably a buff still overall just for the damage increase, but you are going to be doing less mortal wounds with Drachnien than you were previously. His Talon is still very much the anti-infantry option, although he has actually lost some attacks with that. It currently, because it doubles his attacks, allows him to do 16 attacks at Strength 6, -4 AP and 1 damage. Now it just does 14 attacks. They are now Strength 7, so there is a buff there, but they have also dropped an AP going to -3. So instead of 16 attacks at Strength 6, -4 AP, 1 damage, it's now 14 attacks at Strength 7, -3 AP and 1 damage, although, to be fair, it does now also have the devastating wounds rule, so the Talon of Horus is also going to be doing mortal wounds in melee. So overall, less attacks and AP, but higher strength and potentially mortal wounds. So I think it's probably overall a buff in the grand scheme of things, so he's not doing too badly, but on the actual datasheet side in terms of his abilities, he has lost a lot. And on his buffing side of things, he doesn't just give +1 to charge and reroll hit rolls to the units around him anymore. Now, like Guilliman, he has to choose an aura which he can enact each turn. And this part of his profile is an ability called the War Master. And these abilities are Paragon of Hatred, which gives reroll hits to friendly Heretic Astartes within 6 inches. Mark of Chaos Ascendant, which gives infantry or mounted units within 6 inches a 4-up invuln, which is really quite spicy. And then finally, he also has the Lord of the Traitor Legions, which is a reroll leadership and battle shock for friendly units within 6 inches. So now it's just one of these, and again, like Guilliman, you choose it in your command phase and it lasts until your next command phase. I have to say they actually do all have their uses. I think all will be used at certain points and in certain situations. I think Paragon is very good if you want to chuck out a load of damage, obviously. The 4-up Invuln is fantastic if you are expecting a lot of damage from your opponent, especially if you are expecting a unit, say the one Abaddon is with, to be targeted by the Marine's Oath of Moment. This will be a great way to keep them alive a little bit longer. And I think the reroll leadership and battle shock test one will probably be the least used, but there are still going to be times when you really can't afford to fail battle shock, so you may want to do it just to make sure that as many of your units pass that test as they can. He also has a rule called Dark Destiny, which means whenever he passes his Dark Pact leadership test, which with a 5+ leadership he should do most of the time, you roll a dice and on a 2+ you gain an extra command point. So there is also a nice little bit of CP generation from Abaddon as well, and it will certainly allow you to splash out a bit more on some of your stratagems over the course of the game. It's also worth noting, unless they have some kind of cap in the main rules, this could in theory net you 2 command points in each of your turns, because you can do Dark Pact twice. You can do it in the shooting and the fight phase. So unless I'm very much mistaken, Abaddon could roll for this twice and get 2 CP back in one of your turns. That might not survive the actual rulebook. There might be a cap on CP generation, but just by reading this, Abaddon can in theory get you an extra 2 CP in each of your turns. Next up, they show us a few weapons. We do see the Bale Flamer, and Torrent has indeed been confirmed to be the new auto hit ability, which is great. It is a 12-inch range, has d6 plus 3 attacks, so it's a minimum of 4, and it is strength 6, -1 AP, and a flat 2 damage. So it is still going to be a great way for your Helldrake to fly up, get onto some backline units that may be holding a home objective, and just completely burn them away. It's going to be great for clearing backline chaff units, or even things like the new Desolator Marines that may be trying to hide out of line of sight. So this is good. It's still do 2 damage, which is good. The extra attacks is going to really help. And the 12-inch range isn't too bad, because obviously being on a flyer, you can pretty much get this to wherever it needs to be anyway. And then the Obliterator Flesh Metal Guns are, as always, very nice and confusing. Like now, you choose a profile to use. One is very much anti-tank, one is more anti-elite infantry, and one is more anti-chaff. The number of shots for them has actually gone down. It's gone from d6 plus 9 shots to just d6 plus 3 for the Warp Hail, but it has gained sustained 1. The Ruinous Salvo is now just a d6 instead of d3 plus 3, but it has gained a pip of strength going to 8, and also gained the Blast rule, which is a very nice addition. And then the Focused Malice is still d3 shots, but now it's not only strength 12 instead of strength 9, but it also has the Melter 2 rule. So this can potentially be doing 6 damage if your target is within 12 inches. So there are some very nice potent changes there. I think personally the Focused Malice sounds like the best option and just going after those enemy vehicles, but equally Ruinous Salvo with Blast will be very, very good at clearing through big squads of Orc boys. I would almost say that the Ruinous Salvo is going to be better at clearing big squads of chaff than the anti-chaff one, which is the Warp Hail. So I would just use that or the Focused Malice one like 99% of the time, I think. Finally, we do also get to see a stratagem, and this is quite interesting because the Chaos stratagems have the base rule, and in this case, Dark Obscuration. It lets you choose a unit which has been selected as a target for enemy shooting, and it gains the Stealth rule. But in addition to that, some of the Chaos stratagems give you an extra bonus based on your unit keyword. So in this case, it is the Nurgle keyword, and if you put this on a Nurgle unit, not only do they get that Stealth rule, but they also cannot be targeted unless the enemy unit is within 12 inches. Now, Stealth is presumably going to be +1 to your save or -1 to hit or something like that. I don't think we know just yet. But if you put this on a Nurgle unit, you could potentially be forcing your enemy to waste all their shots, because it doesn't say that they can then target another unit. They just choose your unit as the target for their attacks, you pop this on them, and if the enemy squad is over 12 inches away, that squad can't be targeted for their attack, so their shots are they're wasted. They can't go anywhere. and they can't choose another target, so they're gone. So you can potentially really play around with an opponent. If they've got an enemy unit which is just over 12 inches away, they're going to be like, do I target him with my attacks? Because he could just do this stratagem for 1 CP and all my shots would be wasted. So it's a really good way to add some more protection to your Nurgle units. I just think in general it's a cool twist to the stratagem system, and I think it's going to make Chaos armies just that little bit more unique in terms of how they approach their stratagems and how they use them and how they save their CP. Like, do you save them to use the stratagems that are going to sort of buff your specific Chaos keyword units even better? Or do you just still go for a wide range of units, like a very much a Black Legion army with all the different keywords in, and try and get the benefit of all of them over the course of the game? But that is going to be it for today. There were loads of Chaos goodies today, and there was also some Necron stuff coming tomorrow, apparently. But as always, I'd love to know what you think of these rules. Are Chaos looking like they are finally going to be getting their day in the sun in 10th edition? Or was there more you would have liked to have seen? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.